John, did you know that Shakespeare was born in Kiribati?
I can well believe it. Look at this. Bodies all over the place.
Let's spend a short time listening to the sweet sounds from the inter-school choir competitions.
You know, every time these kids walk on stage, their confidence and their joy is really infectious, and that's a pretty unbeatable combination.
But our history hasn't always been peaceful. Here in 1943, one of the bloodiest conflicts of the Pacific War was fought, the Battle of Tarawa. In 4 days, this small piece of earth cost the lives of some 7,000 US Marines and Japanese defenders. And here, 60 years later, the Marines have landed again. While we await the arrival of the President of Kiribati, let us pause a moment and reflect on the circumstances which have led to this day. At the outbreak of World War II, Kiribati was the Gilbert's part of the Gilbert and Ellice Islands colony. The main concern of the Allies at that time was the presence of German raiders in the Pacific, and a team of New Zealand Post Office employees was sent to these islands as coast watchers and wireless operators. It must have seemed a great adventure for these young men. Some were in fact so young they had to get their parents' permission to go overseas.
All the coast watchers were just young boys, and they were mostly from rural areas, I think, too. So, you know, they didn't know what life was about at all.
Indeed, the prospect of war must have seemed very remote in this quite exotic location.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
The Japanese surprise attack on Pearl Harbor changed everything. Suddenly, the Gilbert Islands were on the front line. 2 days after Pearl Harbor, Japanese imperial forces landed on the northern islands of Prt3 and Makin. It has been estimated that some 730 Gilbertese men, women and children lost their lives in World War II. Winnie Powell and her sister Connie were children when the Japanese invaded Prt3.
We can never forget it.
Gane sito po ngaira o isaina. Daya kan awa pakas akia po tarin suku. Iyon tarin daya kan. Ayaren ganen kisa sukung kiki yo. Sanora aron ka nga nakatiti sa dan. Ari ako nando ko. Atawa ka nga kotoy ko. Ataw ikay English ka nga ane tayan mikatiya kisipon nori natara.
Isabella di nain best way ni di daya. Na way ni di sa dan na nera na tani. Nera karabani giri. Oh, mani kaya ba ni ni gan si ba. Ay dali ka ba daya kasi na ba di sa dan na. Ang kaya kasi ay dagre do mani ay nang ko ya matira.
In September 1942, the Americans made a raid on Prt3 from a submarine. Their occupation was short-lived, and 13 Americans were captured and taken north to Kwajalein. But the Japanese suspected local involvement and sent their bombers to punish the small village of Gewea.
Ari po ni luara da kain ni Gewea. Ngaya kain na dali sa buminga rin abueta. Kain na bangan na rin pinarariata.
The Japanese bombing of Gewea resulted in the deaths of 48 men, women and children.
Kanga pugina winning kia karawari yawas nako. Pa aki kanta ni ngaya pa enapa kate po miruya. Pa pugina pa yang e te puaka ni aki roro kon ta boy kiki. Pa tapeta te puaka yon. Prt3 au kianga. Kewe yang kan si te kita yon. Ngaya ren ke ro ko te wani kita. O tani no sino ko ni nata pa aki kanta ni ngaya pa na. Inapakate po na yatap. Na ite kanini kan ngi aki na kon nikapakapo mi ono Prt3. Aya na kon mikasiyari ngayari apo ni tali na tinatintaya kan. Amari rang kan ari pinara.
The increased American activity prompted the Japanese to extend their control to the more southern islands. They were on the lookout for Europeans and coast watchers.
When the Japanese first came to Mayana, Arthur and the other two men hid for 2 or 3 days until the Japanese went away. But then they came back about a week later.
The third occasion, the locals in the village were rounded up, and they took one of the local men and cut his ear off, and said that they were going to do more of the same thing if they didn't, show them where the men were hiding. And then they went off in their boat again, and when they returned, the men were there waiting for them.
The 17 New Zealanders were brought to the fortified island of Beso in Tarawa. There they were held with 5 other Europeans, 2 Australians, a wireless operator and a retired sea captain, and 3 British nationals. One of these was the Reverend Zad. The people of Peru say he would have been safe, but his refusal to trample on the Union Jack enraged the Japanese commander, and he was taken away. Local eyewitnesses in Beso say the captives were held in appalling conditions and very badly treated. Then, in an act of singular brutality, the 22 defenseless men were taken out and executed, beheaded.
It's a horrible thought, really, for everyone waiting, for their turn. That's what I think must have been the most terrifying thing, would be, to just wait in line, because I don't think it was 22 men with each with a sword at the same time. I think it was one after the other, which would have been really pretty awful. Yeah.
During the same period, the 13 American prisoners of war in Kwajalein were also executed. Despite these well-documented atrocities, there were also moments where individuals rose above the prevailing barbaric conditions.
In life, there is nothing all right or all wrong. There is good and bad in all of us. The thing I remember most about the war was the Japanese wireless operator. He told the boys who were cooking for them that the Japanese had decided to kill all the missionaries. And he said he was sorry for the sisters. The boys came and told us, and late that night, the Japanese officer visited Father Grand George and asked him whose side he was on. Father said, "I am a missionary and I want peace." The Japanese officer went over to the sister's house and stood in front of the door while the Japanese marched past.
In the meantime, the Japanese had relocated their main base to the island of Beso in Tarawa. A vast complex of fortifications was built on land and on the surrounding reef. The defense of the island was in the hands of an elite and highly motivated force of Japanese naval marines. They were well armed, well dug in, and prepared to defend Beso with their lives. On the 20th of November 1943, the US Navy and the Marines arrived. The battle for Tarawa was the first ever marine assault in coral reef conditions. The lessons learned here were at the cost of appalling casualties. In all, the recapture of the Gilberts cost the lives of nearly 2,000 US Marines and more than 5,000 Japanese defenders. This, then, is the event we commemorate today. We are honored today with the presence of Mr. Harry Jackson and Mr. Joe Sobel, two veterans of the battle, and Commander Selby of the U.S. Navy.
Very good. Honored to meet you. I am honored to meet you. Good. Commander Selby from the Certainly. Very nice. Pleasure to be here, sir. Joe Sobel, also a veteran of the battle.
Haze, half, right, step. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready,
The second part of our commemoration takes us to this peaceful spot. "60 years ago, this was Red Beach 2, one of 4 key target areas on day 1 of the landing. Much of the tragedy of Tarawa lay in these waters. On the day of the landing, the neap tide meant that waters covering the reef were at their very lowest. After the first wave, almost all of the landing craft were stranded near the edge of the reef. The majority of the Marines had to wade hundreds of yards ashore in waist-deep water. They had no protection from the relentless fire of the concealed defenders. From above, a Navy pilot described the scene. The water never seemed clear of tiny men, their rifles over their heads, walking slowly beachwards. I wanted to cry. The great majority of Marines killed or wounded at Tarawa never reached the shore.
All of the fighting, all of the horror, all of the death is for you children. For you children to be safe and love each other and have children in a peaceful world. We're all here to honor all of the dead Marines, and not just American Marines, Japanese Marines, because believe me, they are an incredibly brave lot. They don't come braver.